Popped up on Cassie's phone just as I walked into our kitchen that Tuesday morning. What I read there would destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my friends, and myself. LOL, his proposal was so cringe. Thank God I said no. The message was meant for her girlfriends in the FitFam_wives chat, but I was still in that group from when Cassie added me months ago to include me in her world. My coffee mug hit the counter harder than I intended. My name is Ron Pritchard. I'm 42, sell real estate in Cedar Pines, Maine, and until that moment, I thought I was living a decent life with a woman who loved me. The proposal she was laughing about, that was mine. The one I'd made 3 years ago on bended knee at Sunset Point, overlooking the lake where my father taught me to fish. I stared at that message for a full minute, my hands shaking. Then something cold and calculating settled into my chest. Without thinking, I typed back, "Dodged a bullet." The chat went silent immediately. Then the frantic backpedaling started. "OMG, Ron, we didn't know you were still in here." "It was just girl talk. We didn't mean anything." But I was already screenshotting everything. Every laugh at my expense, every joke about my boring job, every snide comment about how I wasn't ambitious enough for their precious Cassie. 3 years of marriage, and this was what my wife really thought of me. I forwarded the screenshots to Cassie's mother, Mrs. Elkins, who'd been planning our vow renewal ceremony for months. Then I walked out of the house, leaving my coffee growing cold and my marriage in ashes. Cedar Pines is the kind of small town where everyone knows everyone else's business, usually before they know it themselves. It's got one main street, a dying downtown, and enough gossip to fuel a soap opera. I've lived here my whole life, inherited my father's real estate business, and built what I thought was a solid reputation as the guy who'd give you straight answers about property values and mortgage rates. Cassie moved here 5 years ago from Portland, all blonde ambition and Instagram dreams. She called herself a lifestyle influencer, which mostly meant she took pictures of her morning smoothies and got free yoga pants from companies desperate for exposure. When we met at the Lantern, our local bar, I thought I'd won the lottery. Now I realized I'd been playing a rigged game all along. My phone started buzzing before I even made it to my office. Mrs. Elkins calling to scream about the screenshots. Then Cassie, hysterical and demanding I come home right now to discuss this misunderstanding. Then her friends trying to do damage control. I turned off my phone and drove to work, where my colleague Eddie was already brewing coffee and sorting through property listings. "You look like someone ran over your dog," Eddie said, glancing up from his computer. Eddie's been my partner for 8 years, a former cop turned real estate agent with a talent for reading people and a mouth that never stops moving. "Worse," I said, showing him the screenshots. "Someone ran over my marriage." Eddie read through them twice, his expression growing darker. "Jesus, Ron, this is brutal. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to destroy them," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "All of them, legally, publicly, and completely." Eddie raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like you." "The old me is dead," I replied. "The new me plays to win." That afternoon, I started my investigation. Not with spy cameras or illegal wiretaps, but with something much more powerful. Social media and public records. Amazing what people will post online when they think nobody's watching. Cassie's Instagram told a story she probably didn't realize she was sharing. Late-night posts from locations she'd never mentioned to me, check-ins at restaurants during her supposed brand meetings, and photos with a consistent background character, Lucas Fenton. Luke was 29, built like a Greek statue, and ran fitness classes at the local gym. His own social media was a shrine to his abs and his souped-up Dodge Charger. More importantly, he'd been liking and commenting on Cassie's posts for months, using increasingly intimate language that made my stomach turn. I spent the evening going through phone bills, credit card statements, and social media posts. The pattern was clear. Cassie had been living a double life, and I'd been too trusting to see it. Around midnight, Maddie Chen called me. Maddie was supposedly one of Cassie's close friends, but she'd always been friendlier to me than the others. "Ron, I'm so sorry about what happened today," she said. "I tried to tell them they were being too harsh, but you know how they get when they're together." "Do I?" I asked. "Apparently, I don't know much of anything. Look, there's stuff you should know about Cassie and Luke. It's been going on for months." My grip tightened on the phone. "Tell me everything." What Maddie told me made my blood run cold. The affair had started 6 months ago at the gym. Everyone in their social circle knew about it. They'd been planning weekend getaways, splitting expenses on romantic dinners, and laughing about how clueless I was. There's more, Maddie said quietly. They've been talking about your dad's property, the lakeside lot you inherited. Luke thinks it's worth a fortune, and Cassie's been researching how to get it appraised without you knowing. My father's land. 20 acres of pristine lakefront that had been in our family for 3 generations. I'd rather burn it than let those two get their hands on it. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you're a good guy, Ron. You didn't deserve what they did to you today. And honestly, Cassie's been talking trash about all of us behind our backs. I'm tired of pretending we're friends. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, planning. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next few days were a masterclass in small-town intelligence gathering. I didn't need to hire a private investigator or break any laws. I just needed to pay attention and let people talk. Mrs. Halloway, who runs the flower shop and knows everyone's business, was my first stop. I bought flowers for my office, completely innocent, and mentioned how stressed I'd been about marriage troubles. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry to hear that," she said, eyes lighting up with the prospect of fresh gossip. "Though I have to say I've been wondering about some things I've seen around town." She'd seen Cassie's car at Luke's apartment complex multiple times. She'd witnessed them holding hands at the coffee shop on Main Street. She'd even overheard Luke bragging to his buddies about his sugar mama at the Lantern last week. "I didn't want to say anything," Mrs. Halloway continued, "but everyone's been talking. We all like you, Ron. You're honest, you work hard, and you don't deserve this." From there, the information flowed like water. The gym receptionist mentioned how Luke and Cassie always scheduled their sessions back to back. The waitress at Romano's confirmed they'd been having intimate dinners there for months. Even Officer Grant, who'd gone to high school with me, pulled me aside to say he'd seen them together and was concerned about my well-being. But I needed more than gossip. I needed evidence that would hold up in the court of public opinion. That's when I remembered Cassie's laptop. She'd left it open the morning of the group chat incident, rushing out to meet her friends for damage control. I'd been too angry to look at it then, but now I approached it with cold calculation. Her email was still logged in, her social media accounts were active, and her photo gallery was a goldmine of incriminating evidence. Photos of her and Luke together, dating back months, screenshots of their text conversations, full of intimate details and plans for their future together. Most incriminating of all, a folder labeled Property Research, containing appraisals of my father's land and printed articles about property transfer laws in Maine. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning to steal my inheritance. I copied everything to a flash drive, then covered my tracks. By the time Cassie came home that evening, I was sitting in my recliner, reading a book like nothing had happened. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. She looked beautiful as always, but now I could see the calculation behind her perfect smile. "About what?" I asked, not looking up from my book. "About yesterday, about those messages. You completely overreacted, and now my mother won't speak to me." I set down my book and looked at her directly. "Did you mean what you said? About my proposal being cringe?" She shifted uncomfortably. "It was just girl talk, Ron. We say things we don't mean." "So, you do mean it when you call me boring? When you say I'm not ambitious enough? When you laugh about how I'm just a wallet with feet?" Her face went pale. "You read more of the messages." "I read all of them, Cassie, 3 years worth. Every joke, every insult, every time you've made me the punchline of your little group. Ron, I can explain." "Can you explain, Luke?" The silence that followed was deafening. Cassie's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, searching for words that wouldn't come. "I know about the affair," I continued calmly. "I know about the dinners, the hotel stays, the weekend trips you've been taking while I thought you were at conferences. I know about the property research and your plans for my father's land." Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but they looked calculated rather than genuine. "Ron, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" She sat down across from me, suddenly vulnerable. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to understand that the man you married, the pushover who let you walk all over him for 3 years, is gone. The new me fights back." "Are you threatening me?" I smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. "I don't make threats, Cassie. I make promises. And I promise you this. By the time I'm done, everyone in this town will know exactly who you really are." That weekend, I put my plan into motion. It started small. A conversation with Mrs. Halloway about how hurt I was by my wife's betrayal, knowing she'd spread it to half the town by Monday. A casual mention to Eddie about Cassie's affair, trusting him to share it with his network of former police contacts. But the real masterstroke came when I decided to confront Luke directly. Saturday morning, I showed up at the gym during his busiest class. The place was packed with his usual clientele, bored housewives, young professionals, and weekend warriors trying to recapture their youth. Luke was in his element, strutting around in designer athletic wear, calling out encouragement and showing off his physique. He didn't notice me until I walked right up to him. "Luke, good to see you, buddy," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I've been meaning to thank you." He froze, his confident smile faltering. "Thank me?" "For the marriage counseling. All those private sessions with my wife really helped her work through her issues. Though I have to ask, do you always meet with clients at hotels, or is that a special service you provide?" The gym went dead silent. Every head turned toward us, and I could see phones coming out to record what was obviously about to become drama. Luke's face turned red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. The Marriott last month, Romano's every Thursday night, those weekend trips to Portland. Very thorough counseling. I especially appreciate how you've been helping her research property law. That's going above and beyond." "You're crazy," Luke said, but his voice cracked. "Am I? Because I have photos, Luke. Lots of them. Should I share them with everyone here, or would you prefer to explain to your clients why you've been sleeping with a married woman?" The crowd was murmuring now, phones definitely recording, and Luke looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "This is harassment," he said weakly. "This is truth," I replied. "And the truth is, you've been screwing my wife while I paid the bills. But don't worry, I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to thank you." "Thank me?" "For showing me who she really is. For 3 years, I thought I was married to someone special. Now I know I was married to someone who'd cheat with a gym rat who still lives with roommates at 29. The insult hit home. Luke's face went from red to purple, and I could see him struggling not to throw a punch in front of all these witnesses. "You want to settle this like men?" he said, stepping closer. "Absolutely," I replied, "but not with our fists, with our wallets. I hear you've been making promises to my wife about your bright future. Let's see if you can back them up when everyone in town knows what kind of man you really are." I turned to address the crowd directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Luke Fenton, homewrecker extraordinaire. He's available for private training sessions, and apparently his rates are very reasonable. Just ask my wife." Then I walked out, leaving Luke standing there humiliated in front of his clients and colleagues. By the time I got home, the video was already making rounds on social media, and my phone was buzzing with messages of support from people I hadn't heard from in years. Cassie was waiting for me, furious and crying. "How could you do that?" she screamed. "You humiliated him in front of everyone." "Good," I said simply. "Now you know how it feels." The video from the gym went viral in Cedar Pines, which admittedly isn't saying much in a town of 8,000 people. But within 24 hours, everyone knew about Cassie's affair, and the court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. My phone rang constantly with messages of support. Customers called to express their sympathy and book appointments, as if buying real estate was their way of showing solidarity. The local newspaper even called, wanting to do a story about maintaining dignity in difficult times. Meanwhile, Cassie's world was crumbling. Her Instagram sponsors started dropping her immediately. Apparently, lifestyle influencer caught cheating on devoted husband wasn't the brand image they wanted to promote. Her follower count plummeted as people shared the gym video and added their own commentary about small-town drama. But I was just getting started. Eddie had been busy too, using his old police contacts to dig up information about Luke. Turned out our fitness guru had a history of inappropriate relationships with clients. 3 different gyms in Portland had quietly let him go for boundary issues with married women. "This guy's a serial homewrecker," Eddie told me over coffee Monday morning. "He's got a pattern. Targets unhappy wives, promises them a better life, then moves on when things get complicated. How many people know about this? Everyone who matters. I may have mentioned it to a few people who mentioned it to a few more people. You know how it is?" I did know. In a small town, information spreads faster than wildfire, and Eddie had lit the match. By Tuesday, Luke was getting confronted by angry husbands all over town. His afternoon classes were canceled when 3 different women's spouses showed up, demanding to know if their wives were getting special attention. The gym owner, tired of the drama, suspended Luke pending an investigation. Cassie tried to do damage control, posting a carefully worded statement on social media about private matters and working through difficulties. But the comments section was brutal. Women she'd considered friends were sharing their own stories about Cassie's behavior, her constant put-downs of me, and her obvious affair with Luke. Maddie was particularly helpful, sharing screenshots of private conversations where Cassie had mocked other people's marriages and bragged about her upgrade from her boring husband. "She called you her starter husband," Maddie told me during one of our phone calls. "Said you were good for establishing her in town, but she was ready for someone more exciting." The property research was the final nail in the coffin. I'd made copies of everything and shared them with a lawyer friend who confirmed my suspicions. Cassie and Luke had been planning to forge my signature on property transfer documents. They'd researched the value of my father's land, worth nearly $500,000, and had even contacted developers about potential sales. It was fraud, plain and simple. I could have had them both arrested. Instead, I decided to let the town handle the punishment. Wednesday evening, I attended the weekly town council meeting, something I'd never done before. The agenda was routine: budget discussions, permit applications, the usual small-town business. But during the public comment period, I stood up. "I'd like to address the community about a matter of public safety," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the small meeting room. Mayor Davidson, who'd known my father, nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead, Ron. It's come to my attention that there are individuals in our community who are targeting married couples for financial fraud. They seduce unhappy spouses, then convince them to illegally transfer property owned by their families." I held up the printed evidence, the property research, the developer contacts, the forged signature practice sheets I'd found in Cassie's email. "I have evidence that my own wife and her lover were planning to steal land that's been in my family for 3 generations. I'm not pressing charges because I believe our community is capable of handling this kind of behavior appropriately." The room erupted in murmurs. I recognized faces throughout the crowd: neighbors, customers, people who'd known my father and respected our family name. I'm sharing this information because other families might be at risk. If someone you love is suddenly interested in property values, meeting with strangers about real estate, or asking unusual questions about inheritance law, you might want to pay attention. I distributed copies of the evidence to the council members and left the originals on the public table where anyone could examine them. "That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time." The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous ovation. As I walked out, people stopped me to shake my hand, pat my back, and express their outrage at what had been done to me. By Thursday morning, Cassie and Luke were pariahs. Luke's remaining clients had canceled their sessions. The gym owner, facing pressure from members who threatened to cancel their memberships, fired him outright. His roommate, Jeff, kicked him out after learning about the fraud scheme, leaving Luke to sleep in his precious Charger. Cassie fared even worse. Her remaining sponsors dropped her after the town council meeting made local news. The story was picked up by Portland media as a human interest piece about small-town justice, complete with her photo and details about the affair and fraud attempt. Her friends abandoned her completely. Even Tara and Jen, who'd been part of the original group chat mockery, publicly distanced themselves from her behavior. But Cassie wasn't going down without a fight. Friday afternoon, she showed up at my office with Luke in tow, both of them looking desperate and angry. "We need to talk," she said, barging past Eddie and into my private office. "Actually, we don't," I replied calmly, not looking up from my computer. "My lawyer says any communication should go through him now." "Ron, please," Luke said, and I was surprised by how pathetic he sounded. "This has gone too far. We made mistakes, but you're destroying our lives." I finally looked at them. Cassie's perfect appearance was cracking. Her hair wasn't styled, her makeup was smudged, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. Luke looked even worse, unshaven and wearing the same gym clothes from 2 days ago. "You destroyed your own lives," I said. "I just made sure everyone could see it." "We'll leave town," Cassie said desperately. "We'll disappear, and you'll never see us again. Just stop this campaign against us." "Campaign?" I laughed. "I haven't campaigned against anyone. I've just told the truth. If the truth is destroying you, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray everyone who trusted you." "You're enjoying this," Luke accused. "You're absolutely right, I am. For 3 years, you made me feel like I wasn't good enough for my own wife. You convinced her to mock me, belittle me, and plan to steal from me. Now you're both getting exactly what you deserve. The fraud thing was just research, Cassie said weakly. We weren't actually going to do anything. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a printed email, one I'd found in her deleted folder that morning. Really? Then what's this email to your lawyer friend in Portland, asking about the statute of limitations on forged signatures? Or this one to a notary asking about witnessing documents when one party isn't present? Their faces went white. You were absolutely going to steal my father's land. You'd already planned how to do it. The only reason you didn't was because I caught you first. Eddie appeared in the doorway. Everything okay in here, Ron? Just fine. These folks were just leaving. Actually, Eddie said with a grin, there's something they might want to see first. He handed me his phone, which was open to Facebook. The screen showed a new post from Jen, Cassie's former friend. Oh, this is interesting, I said, reading aloud. Luke, did you know that while you were sleeping with my wife, you were also texting Jen about meeting up? She's got screenshots of you calling Cassie clingy and asking if Jen wanted to hang out privately. Luke's face went from white to green. Cassie spun to stare at him, her mouth falling open. You were cheating on me while you were cheating with me? She whispered. Cassie, I can explain. With Jen? My friend Jen? She's not your friend, I interjected helpfully. None of them are. They're all sharing stories about you on social media. Apparently you've been a terrible friend to everyone, and they're enjoying watching you get what's coming to you. Cassie started crying. Real tears this time, not the calculated ones she'd used to try to manipulate me. How did this happen? She sobbed. How did everything go so wrong? You made choices, I said simply. Actions have consequences. You're both adults. You should have learned that by now. Luke grabbed Cassie's arm. Come on, let's go. There's nothing for us here. As they headed for the door, I called out one last time. Hey, Luke, I heard your car got repossessed this morning. Something about missed payments. That's rough, buddy. The look of pure hatred he gave me was worth everything I'd been through. After they left, Eddie sat down across from my desk, grinning. You're really enjoying this, aren't you? More than I should, I admitted, but they had it coming. What's next? Next, I think it's time for the grand finale. Saturday morning brought news that made my revenge complete. Cassie and Luke were being evicted from their respective living situations. Luke's roommate had thrown his belongings on the lawn, and Cassie's mother, humiliated by the public scandal, had driven up from Portland to personally escort her daughter out of my house. I watched from my office window as Mrs. Elkins loaded Cassie's belongings into a U-Haul trailer, her movements sharp with anger and embarrassment. Neighbors gathered on their porches and sidewalks, not even pretending to hide their interest in the drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Maddie. They're planning something for tonight. Cassie's been calling everyone, trying to organize some kind of public confrontation to clear her name. Thought you should know. I smiled. Let them come. I was ready. That evening, Cedar Pines held its monthly community barbecue in Riverside Park, a tradition that brought together half the town for food, music, and socializing. I'd been attending these events my whole life, first with my parents, then alone after my father died, and for the past 3 years with Cassie. Tonight, I went alone, and I'd never felt more confident. The moment I arrived, people flocked to me. Neighbors who'd known my family for decades, customers who appreciated my honest business practices, and even strangers who'd heard about my situation and wanted to express their support. Ron, Mrs. Halloway called out, waving me over to the flower shop's booth. I've been telling everyone what a class act you've been through all this. Your father would be so proud. Thanks, Mrs. H. That means a lot. Officer Grant appeared at my elbow. Heads up, Ron. Cassie and that Luke fellow just pulled into the parking lot. Looks like they're planning to make a scene. Let them, I said. I'm not hiding from anyone. What happened next was better than anything I could have planned. Cassie and Luke approached the center of the park, where a small stage was set up for community announcements. Cassie looked like she'd spent hours preparing. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She climbed onto the stage and grabbed the microphone, her voice echoing across the park. Excuse me, everyone, I know this is unusual, but I need to address some rumors that have been spreading about me. The crowd quieted, sensing drama. I stayed where I was, surrounded by supportive neighbors, and waited. My name is Cassie Pritchard, and I've been the victim of a vicious campaign of lies and harassment by my estranged husband. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw people pulling out phones to record. Ron has been spreading false information about me, trying to destroy my reputation and my relationship. He's manipulated evidence, taken things out of context, and turned this community against me for his own selfish purposes. She was good, I had to admit. Her voice carried just the right mix of vulnerability and strength, and if I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her. The man you all think you know, honest, hard-working Ron Pritchard, is actually controlling, manipulative, and emotionally toxic. He spent 3 years isolating me from my friends, monitoring my activities, and making me feel worthless. The crowd was listening, but I could see skeptical faces. These people had known me their whole lives. I made mistakes, Cassie continued, tears starting to flow. I sought comfort from someone who understood what I was going through. That doesn't make me a criminal or a fraud. That makes me human. Luke stepped forward, taking the microphone. Ron Pritchard has destroyed my career, my reputation, and my relationships through lies and manipulation. He's a bully who can't handle the fact that his wife found someone who actually appreciated her. This was my moment. I stepped forward, and the crowd parted to let me approach the stage. "Are you finished?" I asked calmly. "Ron, don't," someone called out, but I held up my hand. "No, it's okay. They have a right to speak, just like I have a right to respond." I climbed onto the stage, and Cassie instinctively stepped back. Luke tried to look defiant, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Folks, I'm not going to stand here and argue about who said what or who did what to whom. Instead, I'm going to let Cassie and Luke speak for themselves. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the park's sound system, a trick I'd learned from helping set up these events for years. "Cassie, you said I manipulated evidence and took things out of context. Let's hear your own words, in your own voice, with full context." I played the voice messages she'd left me over the past year, messages where she mocked my appearance, my job, my family, and my pathetic attempts to be romantic. Messages where she laughed about my father's death and called his land my ticket out of this dump. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps, angry mutters, and looks of disgust directed at the stage. But I wasn't done. "Luke, you said I destroyed your career through lies. Let's talk about your career." I played recordings of Luke bragging at the lantern about his sugar mama, describing in graphic detail what he was doing with some loser's wife, and laughing about how easy it was to manipulate desperate housewives into paying for his lifestyle. Luke tried to grab the microphone, but I stepped away. "And since you both mentioned the manipulation, let's discuss this." I displayed the property research on the large screen we used for community presentations, the forged signature practice, the developer contacts, the legal research about stealing inherited land. "This is what they call seeking comfort," I announced. "Planning to forge my signature and steal land that's been in my family for 3 generations?" The crowd erupted. People were shouting, some calling for the police, others demanding that Cassie and Luke leave town immediately. But I held up my hand for silence. And amazingly, they listened. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, "because the best punishment for people like this isn't prison, it's truth. Everyone in this community now knows exactly who they are and what they're capable of. That's justice enough for me." Cassie was sobbing now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. "Ron, please." "Please what? Please pretend this never happened? Please let you destroy someone else's family? Please help you steal from the next trusting husband?" Luke stepped forward aggressively. "You self-righteous—" He never finished the sentence. Officer Grant and 2 other cops had appeared at the base of the stage. "That's enough," Grant said firmly. "Both of you need to leave. Now." "This is harassment," Luke protested. "No," Grant replied. "This is trespassing. You're not welcome at this community event, and if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll arrest you for disturbing the peace." As the police escorted them away, the crowd broke into spontaneous applause. People rushed the stage to shake my hand, pat my back, and express their support. "Ron, you handled that perfectly," Mayor Davidson said, climbing onto the stage. "This community stands behind you." Mrs. Holloway was crying. "Your father would be so proud of how you stood up for yourself and your family's honor." Eddie appeared with a beer and a huge grin. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. They got exactly what they deserved. But the evening wasn't over yet. As the crowd began to disperse and the cleanup began, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've ruined everything. We'll make you pay." I showed the message to Officer Grant, who shook his head. Some people never learn. Don't worry, Ron. If they try anything else, we'll be ready. 20 minutes later, we heard shouting from the parking lot. Luke had apparently tried to key my truck in a final act of revenge, but he'd been caught in the act by half a dozen witnesses, including 2 off-duty police officers. As they dragged him away in handcuffs, he screamed threats and obscenities that only made him look more pathetic. Cassie, meanwhile, sat in her mother's car, staring at the ruins of her life with empty eyes. "It's over," I told Eddie as we watched the police car drive away. "Finally, it's really over. What are you going to do now?" I looked around at the community that had supported me, at the land my father had loved, at the business I'd built with honest work and fair dealing. "I'm going to live my life," I said. "The life I should have been living all along." 3 days later, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Cassie and Luke made their final appearance in Cedar Pines. I was in my office, reviewing contracts and enjoying the peace of a drama-free workday, when Eddie burst through the door. "You need to see this," he said, pointing toward the street. Outside, a battered sedan was parked in front of my building. Cassie sat in the passenger seat while Luke stood in the rain, apparently arguing with someone on his phone. "They've been out there for 20 minutes, Eddie said. "Just sitting there, staring at your building." "Probably trying to work up the courage to come in," I replied, not particularly concerned. "Let them sit. I've got work to do." But 10 minutes later, they both walked through my door, dripping wet and looking desperate. "We need to talk," Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, we don't," I replied, without looking up from my paperwork. Everything that needed to be said was said Saturday night. "Ron, please," Luke said, and I was amazed at how different he sounded. Gone was the cocky swagger, replaced by something that sounded almost like begging. "We're leaving town today. We just want to clear the air before we go." I finally looked at them. They were a mess. Cassie's hair hung limp and unwashed. Her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Luke looked even worse, unshaven, hollow-eyed, and wearing clothes that looked like he'd been sleeping in them. "Clear the air?" I asked. "You mean apologize for 3 years of lies, betrayal, and attempted fraud?" "Yes," Cassie said quickly. "That's exactly what we mean. We're sorry, Ron. We made terrible mistakes, and we want to make things right." I leaned back in my chair, studying them. "What do you want?" "We want you to call off the dogs," Luke said. "Tell people to stop harassing us. We can't get jobs. We can't find places to live. We can't even buy groceries without people recognizing us and making scenes. That's not my problem." "It is your problem," Luke exploded, his desperation finally showing. "You turned this whole town against us. You destroyed our lives." "I told the truth," I said calmly. "If the truth destroyed your lives, that's on you." Cassie started crying again. "Ron, I know I hurt you. I know what we did was wrong, but this has gone too far. We're homeless. Luke lost his car. I've lost everything." "Good." The word hung in the air like a slap. Cassie's tears stopped, and both of them stared at me in shock. "Good," she whispered. "You heard me. You're getting exactly what you deserve. You tried to destroy my life, steal my family's land, and humiliate me in front of everyone I know. Now you're facing the consequences of your actions." "We never meant for it to go this far," Luke said weakly. "Bees?" I stood up, and they both instinctively stepped back. "You meant every bit of it. You planned it, you executed it, and you enjoyed it. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." I walked around my desk to face them directly. "You know what the best part is? I didn't have to do anything illegal, immoral, or unethical to destroy you. I just had to tell people who you really are." "Ron," Cassie started. "I'm not finished. You want to know why this town turned against you so completely? It's not because I manipulated them. It's because they've known me my whole life. They know I'm honest, hardworking, and decent. When they had to choose between believing me and believing you, it wasn't even a contest." Luke's face was red with anger and humiliation. "You think you're so perfect. I don't think I'm perfect. I think I'm better than you, and apparently, so does everyone else in this town." "What do you want from us?" Cassie asked desperately. "What will it take for you to forgive us and move on?" I pretended to consider the question. "You know what? There is something you can do." Hope flickered in their eyes. "Leave town today and never come back. Don't contact me. Don't contact my friends. Don't even think about Cedar Pines again. Disappear completely and maybe I'll stop telling people about what you did here." That's it? Luke asked suspiciously. That's it. Simple, right? They exchanged glances, clearly not trusting that it could be so easy. There's no catch? Cassie asked. No catch, just a promise. If I ever see either of you in this town again, if you ever contact me or anyone I know, if you ever try to cause problems for me or my business, I'll make what happened this week look like a warm-up. You can't threaten us, Luke said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm not threatening you. I'm making you a promise. And unlike some people, I keep my promises. They stood there for another minute, clearly wanting to say more but not knowing what. Finally, Cassie spoke. I really did love you once, she said quietly. No, you didn't. You loved what I could provide for you. There's a difference. She flinched as if I'd hit her, but she didn't deny it. Come on, Luke said, taking her arm. Let's go. As they headed for the door, I called out one last time. Hey, Luke! He turned back, and I could see the hatred still burning in his eyes. I heard Jen's been telling everyone about your late-night text messages. Something about you being desperate and pathetic and begging her to meet you at some cheap motel. That's got to sting. His face went purple with rage, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to hit me. But Cassie pulled him toward the door, and they left without another word. Eddie, who'd been watching from his desk, let out a low whistle. Wow, Ron, that was cold. They had it coming. What if they don't leave town? They'll leave. They don't have any choice. Luke's facing criminal charges for vandalizing my truck, and Cassie's mother made it clear she's not welcome back home until she gets her life together. They've got nowhere else to go. An hour later, Mrs. Holloway called to report that she'd seen them loading their belongings into the sedan and driving toward the highway. Good riddance, she said. This town is better off without people like that. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to visit my father's grave. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful, with a view of the lake where we'd spent so many weekends fishing and talking about life. I sat on the bench next to his headstone and filled him in on everything that had happened. I think you would have handled it differently, I said aloud. You probably would have just kicked Luke's behind and been done with it. But this felt right for me. They tried to steal from our family, Dad. They tried to take the land you loved, the land Grandpa cleared with his own hands. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, and I chose to take it as approval. I know you always said revenge was a waste of time, but this wasn't revenge. This was justice. There's a difference. That evening, I stopped by the lantern for the first time since this whole mess started. The moment I walked in, the entire bar erupted in cheers and applause. There he is, someone shouted. The man who cleaned up Cedar Pines. People bought me drinks, shook my hand, and told me stories about their own experiences with cheating spouses and fair-weather friends. It felt good to be surrounded by genuine people who valued honesty and loyalty. Around midnight, as I was getting ready to leave, a woman approached my table. She was attractive, probably in her late 30s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Ron Pritchard? She asked. That's me. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I just moved here from Bangor to take over the elementary school principal position. I've been hearing a lot about you. All good things, I hope. She laughed. Mostly. People seem to think you're some kind of local hero. Just a guy who got tired of being walked on. Well, for what it's worth, I think you handled a difficult situation with a lot of class. It takes courage to stand up for yourself like that. We talked for another hour about the town, her new job, and life in general. She was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly honest. Everything Cassie had pretended to be. As I walked her to her car, she turned to me with a smile. I know this might be too soon, given everything you've been through, but would you like to have coffee sometime? As friends, I mean. I don't know many people in town yet, and you seem like good company. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that a lot. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, for the first time in years without the weight of lies and betrayal hanging over me. Sunlight streamed through the windows, birds were singing outside, and my phone wasn't buzzing with drama or crisis. I made coffee, read the newspaper, and planned my day like a normal person living a normal life. At exactly 9 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Eddie. You need to see the news, he said, barely containing his excitement. I turned on the local morning show, and there it was, a follow-up story about the Cedar Pines scandal. The reporter had tracked down Luke and Cassie to a seedy motel outside Portland, where they were apparently living in their car and fighting constantly. The camera caught them in the middle of a screaming match in the motel parking lot, with Luke accusing Cassie of ruining everything, and Cassie throwing his belongings out of the car. Sources say the couple has been unable to find employment or housing due to their notoriety, the reporter said. This story has become a cautionary tale about the consequences of infidelity and fraud in small communities. I turned off the TV and smiled. Justice served. That afternoon, I had coffee with Sarah Mitchell at the little cafe on Main Street. We talked about books, travel, and our hopes for the future. She was everything I'd thought I wanted in Cassie, but had never actually found. Genuine, kind, and interested in building something real, rather than just taking what she could get. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said as we were finishing our second cups. "Sure." "Do you think you'll ever trust someone again, after what you went through?" I considered the question seriously. "I think I'll be more careful about who I trust. But I won't let what they did turn me into someone bitter and closed off. That would be letting them win." That's a very healthy attitude. I had good teachers. This town is full of people who've been married for 30, 40, 50 years. They know what real love looks like, and it's nothing like what I had with Cassie. As we walked back toward our cars, Sarah stopped and turned to me. "Ron, I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but I think your ex-wife made the biggest mistake of her life when she betrayed you. Any woman would be lucky to have a man with your integrity and strength." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. That means more than you know. 6 months later, Cedar Pines held its annual Founders Day celebration. I attended with Sarah, who'd become not just a friend, but someone I was genuinely excited to build a future with. As we walked through the festival, greeting neighbors and enjoying the festivities, Mrs. Holloway pulled me aside. "Ron, dear, I have some news you might find interesting." "What's that?" "I heard from my cousin in Portland that your ex-wife and that Luke fellow broke up. Apparently, she caught him cheating with some waitress, and they had a huge fight. She's working at a call center now, living in a studio apartment, and he's back to living with his mother." I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger. They were strangers now, people from a different life that had nothing to do with who I'd become. "Good for them," I said simply. "Good for them?" Mrs. Holloway looked surprised. "They're getting exactly the life they deserve. I'm getting exactly the life I deserve. Everyone wins." That evening, as Sarah and I sat on my porch watching the sunset over the lake, she asked me if I ever regretted how everything had played out. Do I wish I'd handled it differently?" "I guess that's what I mean." I thought about it as I watched the light fade over the water, where my father had taught me to fish, where my grandfather had built his first cabin, where generations of my family had found peace and purpose. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret anything. They tried to destroy me, and instead they gave me the chance to become the man I was always supposed to be." Sarah smiled and took my hand. "And what kind of man is that? The kind who doesn't settle for less than he deserves. The kind who fights for what matters. The kind who keeps his promises and expects others to do the same. I like that kind of man." "Good," I said, squeezing her hand. "Because that's the only kind I know how to be anymore." As the stars came out over Cedar Pines, I realized that Cassie and Luke had actually done me the greatest favor of my life. They'd shown me who I really was underneath all the people-pleasing and conflict avoidance. They'd forced me to find my backbone, my voice, and my self-respect. Most importantly, they'd cleared the way for something real, something honest, something worth building a life around. I'd won more than just revenge against two people who'd betrayed me. I'd won back myself. And that, I realized, was the last laugh after all.